The day my brother betrayed me was the day I discovered who I really was. I remember standing in our mother's old living room, the afternoon light slanting across the floorboards, when my brother looked me in the eyes and said the one sentence that shattered everything I believed about our family. His voice didn't tremble. Mine did. Up until that moment, I thought I understood the world I came from, the traditions we followed, the stories we were told, the unspoken rules that shaped us. I thought I knew him, the boy who used to share his biscuits with me when Mama wasn't looking, the young man who stood beside me at every hardship. But betrayal has a strange sound. Sometimes it's loud, a scream, a slammed door. But that day, it was quiet. Calm. Almost rehearsed. And when the truth slipped out of his mouth, it didn't just feel like a knife. It felt like a key. A key unlocking a door I didn't even know existed, a door that led straight into the past, into secrets layered beneath decades of silence and a family legacy nobody ever intended for me to find. A legacy he protected. A legacy he chose to reveal only when it served him. A legacy that proved I wasn't who I thought I was, and neither was he. That day, my world didn't just fall apart, it rearranged itself. And as I stood there, shaking, watching the brother I once trusted more than anyone, I realized something I never expected. Sometimes the person who hurts you the most is the only one who knows the truth about who you really are. The day my brother betrayed me was the day I discovered who I really was. I still remember the way the sunlight spilled across my mother's old living room that afternoon. It was warm, gentle, the kind of light that usually softened everything it touched. But not that day. Not when my brother stood in front of me with a face I barely recognized and a truth that felt too heavy, too sharp, to belong in the home that raised us. He didn't shout. He didn't pace. He didn't even look guilty. He just breathed out one sentence, one clean, quiet sentence, and the life I knew split straight down the middle. Up until that moment, I believed I understood the story of our family. I believed in the rhythm of our childhood, in the unspoken comfort between siblings who had endured the same storms under the same fragile roof. I believed in him, the boy who held my hand on my first day of school, the teenager who brought me stolen mangoes from the neighbor's tree, the young man who always claimed he would protect me no matter what. But betrayal doesn't always slam doors. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it arrives with the softness of dust settling on old shelves. Sometimes it comes from the very person you would have sworn would never hurt you. And that day, it came from my brother. But what he revealed wasn't just a personal wound, it was a revelation about our entire bloodline. A legacy that had been buried so deep, no one ever expected it to resurface. A legacy generations in the making. A legacy only he had known. A legacy he chose to expose the moment he decided his interests no longer aligned with mine. And as he stood there, watching me break, I realized something I never thought I would. Sometimes the person who hurts you the most is the only one who knows the truth about who you really are. Beginning of normal life, early setup. But to understand how that moment came to be, how a quiet afternoon in my mother's living room became the axis on which my entire life turned, I have to take you back. Back before the betrayal, before the discovery, before the fractures that ran between us showed their first thin lines. Back to when things felt normal, or at least, what I believed was normal. My name is Aaliya, and for most of my life, my world was small, predictable, and tightly woven around family. I grew up in a modest two-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood where every street corner had a memory attached to it. Our house always smelled faintly like warm spices, my mother's cooking, always simmering in the kitchen. There was a softness to that place, a kind of gentle clutter that made it feel lived in and safe. My brother, Hamid, was 2 years older than me. Mama used to say we were born with opposite temperaments but the same heart. He was the confident one, quick thinking, always a step ahead in school, always the first to jump into trouble and the first to charm his way out of it. I was quieter, more observant, the one who preferred books and routines and the comfort of knowing what tomorrow looked like. But we fit. Like two sides of a coin, different but inseparable. Every morning, he would bang on the bathroom door, complaining I took too long. Every evening, he would steal bites from my plate even though we were eating the same food. And every night, after Mama fell asleep, we would talk in whispers about everything and nothing, the kind of conversation siblings only share when the world feels small and secrets feel safe. Our mother worked hard, too hard sometimes, to keep us afloat. She never spoke much about our father except to say he was gone. Not dead, not missing, just gone. A word that children don't question until they grow older and realize how many truths can hide inside just 4 letters. But I never pushed. Not back then. Not when Mama's eyes softened and drifted away any time the topic of our father came up. As for Hamid? He never asked either. Or at least, I thought he didn't. Looking back now, I can see the small things, the subtle shifts, the quiet rooms, the private calls, but at the time, nothing seemed out of place. We were just a small family living a small life, doing our best. I worked as an assistant at a local law office, and my brother managed a small logistics business with his friends. Mama had just retired from teaching and spent her days tending to the garden she had always dreamed of cultivating. There was nothing extraordinary about our life. No warning signs. No dark clouds gathering. Just the hum of ordinary days, quiet laughter over evening tea, shared stories around the dinner table, the comfort of routine wrapping around us like a warm shawl. If there were secrets buried beneath all of that, I didn't see them. If my brother carried knowledge that could split our world apart, I didn't sense it. If my family legacy was nothing like what I believed, I had no reason to suspect. But that's the thing about truth, the deep kind, the generational kind. It stays hidden until someone decides to turn the key. And my brother. He had been holding that key for years. That peaceful stretch of life, the calm before the storm, lasted longer than I realized. Long enough for me to believe it was real. Long enough for me to trust it. Long enough for the eventual betrayal to feel like the ground beneath me had been pulled away without warning. Because betrayal doesn't hurt because it's cruel. It hurts because, once upon a time, it was love. And for most of my life, my brother was the person I loved and trusted most. Life, as I knew it, moved with a quiet rhythm. I'd wake up before dawn, the soft buzz of my alarm blending with the distant sound of roosters. Our neighborhood always woke slowly, shutters opening one by one, the milkman's bicycle rattling down the lane, the gentle hum of morning prayers rising from nearby homes. It was the kind of simplicity I cherished. I'd start each morning in the kitchen, boiling water for chai, listening to the soft tick of the wall clock while Mama tidied the living room even though it was already spotless. She was a creature of habit, the kind who ironed pillowcases and polished the wooden edge of the dining table every week. I inherited some of her routines, but not her tireless energy. Hamid would join us later, half awake, rubbing his eyes and running a hand through his hair. He was never a morning person, and yet, somehow, he always looked ready for the day. It was something I envied, that effortless confidence. He'd sit across from me at the breakfast table, tapping his finger absent-mindedly against his cup. "Long day?" I'd tease. "When is it not?" he'd mutter with a crooked smile. Those small moments, the ones so quiet you almost forget they exist, built the foundation of our relationship. They're the moments you think of later, long after everything has broken, wondering how such simplicity could hide so much complexity. My bond with him. If I'm honest, my brother was the person whose approval mattered most to me. Maybe it was because our mother was often too exhausted to offer more than a warm smile at the end of the day. Maybe it was because he was the only one who felt like a constant, someone who understood the weight of our small household responsibilities as well as the unspoken pressures we grew up under. There's something about shared childhoods, the kind built on scarcity, on single-income households, on parents stretched too thin. It binds siblings tightly, stitching their lives together in ways that feel unbreakable. That's why the betrayal cut as deep as it did. Because he wasn't just my brother. He was my closest friend. My confidant. My safe place. Mama's decline, the first tiny shift. Mama had always been strong, but around the time she turned 65, her health began to waver. At first, it was little things: fatigue, forgetfulness, the occasional dizzy spell. We chalked it up to age, to stress, to a lifetime of working harder than her body probably wanted. But slowly, the little things grew into concerning ones. The night she collapsed in the hallway was the first real scare. I still remember the sound, a sharp thud followed by her soft gasp. I ran from my room, heart pounding, and found her on the floor, pale and trembling. Hamid rushed in moments later, kneeling beside her. "It's okay, Mama," he whispered, placing his hand on her shoulder. "We're here." We took her to the hospital, stayed with her through the night, listened to the doctors explain her condition: high blood pressure, stress, borderline anemia. Nothing life-threatening, they said. Nothing urgent. But we didn't need the diagnosis to tell us something had shifted. After that night, Mama became softer, slower in her steps, quieter in her moods. She relied on us more. She'd use my arm for support walking down the hall. She'd ask Hamid to check the locks before bed. It was subtle, but I could feel the shift in the air. And strangely, that was also when my brother's behavior began to change. But at the time, I didn't connect the two. The first clue, small enough to ignore. The first sign, the first real clue that something wasn't as it seemed, came on a quiet evening about 3 months after Mama's collapse. I was in the living room, sorting through papers for work, when I noticed my brother slip into Mama's room. Nothing unusual. He checked on her often. But what caught my attention wasn't him going in, it was the way he closed the door behind him. Not fully. Not loudly. But just enough to make it clear he wanted privacy. Mama never asked for closed-door conversations. She was an open-book kind of person, everything in the house belonged to everyone. I sat still for a few seconds, my pen hovering over a document, listening. I couldn't make out the words, only the low hum of their voices. But I heard something I hadn't heard before. Mama's voice was trembling. And my brother's, it was firm, steady, too steady. I strained to hear, but they spoke in hushed tones. A few minutes later, the door opened. My brother stepped out first, face calm, expression unreadable. Mama followed with a small, forced smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Everything okay?" I asked her. She paused. Just for a fraction of a second. Then she said, "Yes, Beta. Just tired." But as she walked past me, I noticed her hands shaking. I noticed her eyes were red, as though she had been crying. And when I looked at my brother, he avoided my gaze. At the time, I told myself I was overthinking. Mama had been unwell. Maybe they were talking about her medication. Maybe it had nothing to do with me. But the seed of doubt had been planted, small, almost invisible, but powerful enough to make me wonder. The second clue, calls that weren't for me to hear. It wasn't long after that evening that I caught my brother in another strange moment. He was in the backyard late one night, talking on the phone. The air was cool, and the street outside was quiet. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I had stepped out to bring in the laundry Mama had forgotten earlier. But his voice stopped me. He wasn't speaking like himself. He sounded controlled. Guarded. "No, I'll handle it," he said quietly. "No, she doesn't know anything." A pause. "Yes. I'll tell her when it's time." Her. Who was her? Mama? Me? He noticed me standing near the doorway and ended the call abruptly. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, too quickly. "Just work stuff." Work. He always used that excuse, but this time, it didn't fit. Yet I didn't push. I didn't question. Because he was my brother. And trust, real trust, makes you blind in the most dangerous ways. Transition to the discovery. Looking back now, those moments were glaring red flags. But at the time, they were nothing more than ripples, small enough to ignore, subtle enough to dismiss, easy enough to brush aside in the rush of daily life. But betrayal doesn't come out of nowhere. It grows. Slowly. Quietly. In the spaces where truth stops being shared. And in our home, truth had slowly begun disappearing from the conversations, replaced by whispered tones, closed doors, and phone calls that ended too soon. I didn't know it then, but I was inching closer, day by day, to the revelation that would rip through our lives and expose everything. Everything my brother had been hiding. Everything Mama had tried to protect. Everything I wasn't supposed to know. And once the truth came out, there would be no going back. There's a moment, a quiet one, when your heart knows something is wrong long before your mind catches up. For me, that moment arrived one ordinary Tuesday evening. I had come home early from work. The law office had closed early because a senior partner wasn't feeling well, and I remember thinking how rare it was to have a few unexpected hours to myself. I wanted to surprise Mama by cooking her favorite lentil soup, the kind she always said reminded her of her own mother. When I entered the house, everything seemed normal at first. The living room curtain swayed gently with the breeze from the open window. The faint aroma of jasmine, Mama's favorite room spray, lingered in the air. But when I walked down the hallway toward her room, I heard voices again. Not loud. Not arguing. Just tense. That same tension I had caught weeks earlier. I paused, just for a second. My hand hovered over the half-open door. This time, Mama wasn't speaking. It was only my brother's voice. I told you, we'll figure it out, he was saying quietly. But she can't know. Not yet. My breath caught in my chest. She can't know. I didn't know whether he meant Mama or me, but a cold wave washed through me. I stepped back before he could see my shadow under the door. When he walked out a minute later, he looked startled to find me standing by the living room archway. You're home early, he said, recovering quickly. Yeah. Office closed early. Everything okay? He hesitated, only for a heartbeat, but long enough for me to notice. Yeah. Just talking to Mama. Her blood pressure was a little high. He was lying. I could hear it in the way his voice dipped at the end of the sentence. I could feel it in the way his eyes darted away from mine. But I still didn't confront him. I couldn't. Because the thing about family is, you don't want to catch them lying. You want to believe you heard it wrong. You want to believe they're telling you the truth. You want to protect the image of them you've carried your whole life. And so I let it go. For the moment. Mama's quiet change. Around that time, Mama began developing another habit, one I didn't recognize as fear back then. She started locking her bedroom door at night. She had never done that. Not once. Our home had always been open, every room accessible. Mama often said, a house of trust doesn't need locked doors. But then, she started using one. One evening, I tapped gently on her door to bring her tea, and I heard the soft click of the lock before she opened it. She smiled, but her eyes were tired. Beta, you're home late, she said softly. I handed her the cup. You okay, Mama? She hesitated. Just like my brother had earlier. Yes. Just, resting. Her fingers trembled slightly when she took the cup from me. I sat beside her. If something is worrying you, you can tell me. She looked at me with eyes that held years of tenderness, and a pain she refused to explain. There are things, she whispered, a parent carries so their children don't have to. One day, you'll understand. It was the kind of sentence that stays with you. The kind that loops in your mind late at night. But before I could ask what she meant, she reached for my hand and squeezed it. Just remember, she added, family is not always what it seems. But a mother's love is. Then she let go of my hand and looked away, as though she had revealed more than she intended. Those words, they didn't sit right with me. But I tucked them away, unaware of how deeply they connected to the truth I hadn't uncovered yet. The envelope. The next clue, the one that pushed my suspicion into something undeniable, came in the form of a plain, brown envelope. It arrived early on a Saturday morning. I was sweeping the front porch when the postman rode up on his motorcycle. "Letter for your mother," he said, handing it over. "Nothing unusual. Mama still received occasional mail from old colleagues or bank statements. But this envelope didn't look like any of those. No sender name. No printed address. Just her name written in a hurried, uneven hand, as if someone didn't want it traced." I brought it inside and placed it on the dining table. When Mama saw it, she froze for half a second. Most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did. A mother's reaction is something a daughter learns to read like a familiar book. She didn't pick it up immediately. Instead, she wiped her hands on her dupatta, walked to the sink, and took a sip of water even though she wasn't thirsty. Then she reached for it. Her hand shook, more than usual. "Who is it from?" I asked gently. An old friend," she said, voice unsteady. My brother walked in at that exact moment. The second his eyes landed on the envelope, his expression shifted, just slightly, but enough to notice. He walked over and took it from Mama's hand. "I'll take care of this," he said. "No," she whispered, but softly, too softly. He didn't listen. He slipped the envelope into his jacket pocket. I felt a jolt of anger rise inside me. "Why would you take her mail?" I asked. He didn't flinch. "Because it concerns me more than it concerns you." It was such a strange thing to say. Sharp. Possessive. Dismissive. I stared at him, waiting for him to clarify, but he simply walked away toward his room. Mama pressed her fingers to her temples. "Mama," I said quietly, "what's going on?" She opened her mouth to answer, but stopped. "I can't," she whispered. "Not yet. Not yet." Another delayed truth. Another piece of the puzzle hidden from me. My growing fear. By then, the unease inside me had become something else, something heavier. My home didn't feel like home. My brother didn't feel like my brother. My mother was slipping in and out of emotional shadows I didn't understand. And every time I tried to bring it up, something, or someone, shut the conversation down. But the moment that truly changed everything for me happened a week later. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even loud. It was a single sentence my brother let slip in anger, a sentence that cracked the floor beneath everything I believed. "You were never meant to know any of this, Aaliya." Those words didn't just concern a secret. They pointed to a truth. A truth about me. About him. About our family. A truth that would destroy the version of my life I had trusted for years. And the worst part was, I didn't even know what this was. Not yet. But I was about to find out. And once I did, nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. There are moments in life when time doesn't just slow down, it seems to stop entirely, like the world is holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do next. The night everything unraveled was one of those moments. It began quietly. Mama had asked me to help her sort through old documents, bank papers, pension forms, little things she always kept neatly bundled with rubber bands in a drawer beside her bed. She said she wanted everything organized, but the look in her eyes told me it was something else. Something heavier, something she was gathering courage for. We sat together on her bed, soft lamplight pooling across a small mountain of papers. I could hear her breathing, slow, uneven. She handed me one folder at a time, sometimes pausing as if debating whether to give me the next one. At one point, she stopped completely. "Aaliya," she said softly, "before I go, there are things you must." Before she could finish, the bedroom door swung open. Not gently. Not accidentally. But with force. My brother stood there, eyes sharp, jaw tense. "Mama," he said, ignoring me completely. "I told you not to do this right now." Mama's hands trembled. She pulled the papers closer to her, as if shielding them. I looked between the two of them. "What's going on? Why are you talking around me?" And what did you mean the other day when you said I wasn't meant to know any of this? He glared at me. Aaliya, not now. No, I said, voice rising despite myself. Now. Because I'm tired of feeling like a stranger in my own home. He walked in and shut the door behind him. The air grew tight. Mama tried to speak again, but he cut her off. You're not doing this, he snapped. Not today. Not like this. She deserves to know, Mama whispered. Deserve? He scoffed. Do you think she can handle? Enough. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Someone explain what is going on. That was the moment. The one where everything began to break open. Mama lowered her gaze, swallowed hard, and whispered. Your father didn't leave us. My heart thudded. What do you mean he didn't leave? You always said. I know what I said, she replied, voice cracking. I was trying to protect you. Silence swallowed the room. My brother looked away, jaw clenched. Mama continued, your father didn't abandon us. He was taken away. I felt the breath leave my body. Taken away? I looked at my brother, but he didn't offer clarity. That silence, that refusal to meet my eyes, terrified me more than anything Mama could say. Mama inhaled shakily. Your father, he belonged to a different family. A powerful one. Complicated. Controlling. When I became pregnant with you, they threatened him. They wanted to send him abroad, away from us. He refused. My throat tightened. So where is he now? Mama's eyes filled with tears. He passed away, Beta, years ago. Before you turned 4. I stared at her, feeling the room tilt. Why didn't you tell me? Why hide it? Why? Because it wasn't safe, she whispered urgently. He left behind obligations. People who didn't want his second family known. People who wanted his legacy, all of it, to stay with them. The word legacy hung in the air like smoke. I turned to my brother slowly. And you? My voice barely audible. What do you know about this? He exhaled, long and tired. Everything. A chill spread across my skin. For how long? Since I was 15. 15. 10 years. 10 years of silence. 10 years of secrets. 10 years of keeping me in the dark. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. Because it wasn't your burden, he snapped. Because Mama asked me not to. Because your life was normal and safe and I wasn't going to be the one to destroy that. Safe. Normal. Protected. Words suddenly felt like lies. I reached for the pile of documents Mama had pulled out earlier. Before I could touch them, my brother moved quickly, grabbing the folder and pulling it out of reach. You don't need to see this, he growled. Something in me snapped. You don't get to decide that anymore, I said, standing up. My voice shook, but my resolve didn't. Give me the folder. No. Mama's voice cut through the tension. Hamid, let her read it. He didn't move. I said, Mama repeated, firmer this time, let her read it. His face twisted, frustration, anger, something almost like fear, but he set the folder on the bed between us. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were documents I didn't recognize. Property files. Bank statements. A family trust. Photographs of a man I had dim memories of, 2 families, 2 homes, 2 lives. Then I found it. A handwritten letter addressed to Mama. Dated months before my father died. My hand shook as I opened it. The letter. If something happens to me, please don't let them take her. They will come after the girl, not our son. They already know he exists, but they think Aaliya is someone else's child. They must never know the truth. She must never be connected to my name. Promise me you'll protect her. Promise me she will live freely, not under the shadow of my family's legacy. I felt the world go silent around me. My father, the man I barely remembered, had begged my mother to hide me from his own powerful family. Not to protect himself, but to protect me. I looked up at Mama, tears clouding my vision. Why would they come after me? What legacy are you talking about? Mama wiped her eyes. Your father was the firstborn son of a landowning family. Wealth. Influence. Expectations. Those people believe bloodline decides inheritance. They didn't want news of a second child, a daughter, changing the line. And you knew all this? I whispered, turning to my brother. He nodded once. My chest tightened painfully. And you kept it from me for 10 years? His voice rose in frustration. I was trying to protect you. Mama was scared, and I. You should have told me. I cried. You owed me that. For what? He shot back. So you could panic every day? So you could live your life looking over your shoulder? You think you were ready for this at 15? At 18? Even now? Enough. Mama shouted, her voice trembling. This is exactly why I didn't want it to come out like this. But it was too late. Everything was already spilling over. The betrayal reveals itself. I took a step back. So what now? Why tell me suddenly? Why now? My brother's eyes hardened. Because, he said quietly, they reached out. The air left my lungs. Who? The family, he said. Our father's family. They want closure on the inheritance. He hesitated before adding, and they want to confirm whether you exist or not. I felt sick. And you were just going to decide everything without telling me? Again? He didn't deny it. That silence, that heavy, guilty silence, was my answer. My own brother had been speaking to them. Behind my back. Without telling me. About me. That was the betrayal. Not just the secret. Not just the silence. But the choice he made, repeatedly, to decide my life for me. To deny me the truth of who I was. To keep me from my own history. To erase me from a legacy that was mine as much as his. Why? I whispered. Why would you do that to me? His jaw clenched. Because once you're known to them, you can't go back. You can't unknow it. You can't go back to being ordinary. And I didn't want that life for you. I shook my head. You didn't want it for you. You didn't want me complicating your role with them. You didn't want me taking a share of whatever you're negotiating. He froze. That was it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling in my childhood bedroom, listening to the distant ticking of the old hallway clock, the same one Mama used to wind every Sunday evening. Its steady rhythm was comforting once, but now it sounded like a reminder that time kept moving, even when the rest of my world had stopped. Every few minutes, I'd hear footsteps, my brother pacing in the living room downstairs. Heavy steps. Slow. Like a man dragging the weight of something he never meant to carry. I clutched the blanket tighter. I hated how much I still loved him in that moment, even after everything he'd done. Even after the betrayal. Even after the truth. Because for all the anger that pulsed deep inside me, there was a part of me, quiet, wounded, stubborn, that still wanted to believe there was something in him worth saving. Something worth understanding. So just before dawn, when the faintest blue light seeped into the room, I slipped out of bed, wrapped a shawl around my shoulders, and walked downstairs. He was sitting on the edge of the sofa, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. His eyes were red, but not the kind that comes from crying. The kind that comes from holding too many tears back. He didn't look up until I sat across from him. For a moment, we just breathed the same heavy air. Then I said, quietly, "Why didn't you tell me?" He closed his eyes, like those words were heavier than anything he'd been carrying. "I didn't know how," he whispered. "That's not an answer." I kept my voice soft, but steady. I needed him to feel my hurt, not my anger. He looked right at me then, and I saw it, the guilt, the shame, the old resentment, the fear. All tangled together. You were always Mama's favorite, he said suddenly. It wasn't accusatory. It wasn't sharp. It was, tired. And I know you never asked for that. But it made everything harder for me. Harder to tell you the truth. Harder to admit that I did something stupid. I blinked. Of all the things I expected him to say, that wasn't one. He continued slowly, voice thick with regret. I didn't go looking through her things to hurt you. I did it because I needed money, and because I thought maybe, just maybe, Mama left something behind that would fix everything. He swallowed hard. I thought I'd find a bit of cash. A few savings. Not this. Not an entire legacy? I said quietly. He nodded. And once I saw what it was, he ran a hand through his hair. I panicked. I thought, if I tell you, if I bring you into this, everything will change. Our relationship. Our memories. Who we are. And I couldn't handle that. So instead, I murmured, you handled it alone. And badly, he added, with a bitter, humorless laugh. I handled it badly. Silence settled between us again, but this time it wasn't sharp. It was fragile. Thin. I watched him as he stared down at his hands. His fingers fidgeted, twisting around each other, the same way they used to when he lied about breaking my toys as a kid. He wasn't lying now. He was scared. And that scared me, too. Because hurt makes people unpredictable. And betrayal, it makes them desperate. I wasn't trying to steal it, he said quietly. I wasn't. I wanted time to understand it. To figure out what it meant. To know whether it would change you. My throat tightened. Why are you always so convinced I'd leave you behind? He looked up at me with eyes that were years older than when we last spoke like this. Because everybody else has. For the first time since the truth came out, I saw the little boy he used to be, the one who lost friends easily, who struggled in school, who always felt like the world was one step ahead of him. The one Mama protected fiercely. The one I thought I was protecting by loving him. And maybe I didn't protect him enough. Listen to me, I said softly, leaning forward. You are my brother. No inheritance, no secret, no lie, none of it could ever make me walk away from you. His eyes glistened, but he blinked fast, fighting it. But, I continued, gently, but firmly, you hurt me. You broke something. And I need you to understand that before anything else. I know, he whispered. I know I did. And I need you to be honest with me now. About everything. No more hiding. No more protecting me, or Mama, or yourself. I want the truth, the whole truth. He let out a slow, shaky breath. There's more, he said. My heart clenched. More? I repeated. He nodded. I didn't just find the inheritance. I found letters. Documents. Things that explain why Mama hid all this. Things that explain who you really are. The room felt suddenly smaller. The ticking clock grew louder. My hands went cold. And you didn't tell me? I whispered. I was afraid, he said. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid you'd walk away. Afraid you'd learn something about yourself that you weren't ready for. He shook his head, voice trembling now. And because I knew, once you knew the truth, nothing between us would ever be the same. His words broke something inside me, not in anger, but in grief. Grief for the secrets. Grief for the years. Grief for the brother who tried to carry a truth that was never meant to be carried alone. I exhaled slowly, swallowing the sting in my chest. Show me, I said. Whatever you found, show me. He hesitated, and in that hesitation I saw everything. His fear. His guilt. His love. His desperation to fix something already broken. Then he finally nodded. "I'll get the box." As he stood and walked toward Mama's old room, I sat still, hands trembling in my lap, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I wanted answers. I wanted clarity. But more than anything, I wanted my brother back. I didn't know which of those wishes would come true. My brother returned holding a small, worn-out wooden box, the kind Mama used to store sewing needles and loose buttons in. But this one carried something heavier than fabric and thread. The air shifted when he placed it on the table between us. He didn't sit down right away. Instead, he hovered for a moment, rubbing the back of his neck like he was preparing for a storm he knew he caused. "I haven't shown this to anyone," he said quietly. "Not even her." By her, he meant his wife. Something in that confession made my stomach twist. He finally sat, pushing the box toward me. "Open it." My fingers hesitated at the latch. Sweaty, trembling. Like I already knew my life before this moment was about to end, and something new, uncertain, was about to begin. Inside were papers. Yellowed envelopes, folded documents, a small ID photo of Mama looking much younger, younger than I ever saw her, standing beside a woman I didn't recognize. I touched the edge of the photograph. "Who is she?" I whispered. "That's the part," he said, voice thin, "where everything gets complicated." He handed me a letter. Mama's handwriting. The loops, the soft curves, it hit me like a punch in the chest. "Dear child. If you are reading this, it means the truth has found you." My heartbeat thudded in my ears. It was no longer just our secret. It was about to become everybody's. The family meeting. Within 2 days, the truth had spread, not because we wanted it to, but because secrets have a way of slipping through cracks, especially in families like ours. My aunt called first. Then our cousins. Then neighbors who had known Mama since she was a girl. Everyone had the same tone in their voice. Confusion. Curiosity. Fear they wouldn't admit out loud. "Just come to the house," I said to each of them. "Both of us will explain." By evening, our childhood living room, once the quiet heart of Mama's world, was full. Shoes lined the hallway. Murmured prayers floated in the air. Some people stood with their arms folded, others sat on the edge of their seats, faces tight with concern. My brother stood beside me. His posture stiff, hands behind his back, like a man awaiting judgment. I cleared my throat. It felt like standing on a cliff. "There's something you all need to know," I began. A hush fell over the room, the kind that carries both fear and respect. "It's about Mama. About our family. About who I am." The moment the words left my mouth, a woman in the back gasped softly, covering her lips with her fingers. I told them everything, slowly, carefully, respectfully. The documents. The letters. The truth Mama never shared. The legacy she hid. Every word was a weight I had to lift before placing gently into the air. My brother didn't interrupt. Not once. He just stood there, eyes on the floor, letting the truth spill out like it was cleansing him too. When I finished, the reactions came. My aunt pressed a hand to her chest. "Oh, Lord have mercy." Another relative whispered, "I always suspected something wasn't right, but not this." Someone else murmured, "Your Mama carried this alone all these years?" I nodded. That was the part that broke them. Not the inheritance. Not the legacy. But Mama, small, stubborn, proud, carrying a secret that should have never been hers alone. Then came the harder questions. "Why didn't you tell us sooner? How long have you known? Who else knew? Did she mean for you to find this now?" Eyes turned to my brother. He swallowed, stepping forward. "I should have told her the moment I found it," he said, voice steady but heavy. "I didn't, and that's on me. No excuses. No defensiveness. Just the truth." For a moment, the room softened. Even those who came in ready to blame him seemed taken aback by how openly he carried his guilt. But the whispering started anyway. People talk when they don't understand, when fear mixes with tradition and pride. I felt it in my bones, the shift. The judgment. The tremors of a family reevaluating its own history. Some offered comfort. Some offered distance. Some offered opinions I didn't ask for. But the consequence was clear. This truth didn't just change us. It changed the entire family. The community reaction. 2 days later, the news seeped beyond the family, through neighbors, through distant relatives, through the kind of gossip that never needed a name attached. At the grocery store, people looked at me longer than before. At the post office, a clerk whispered to another behind the counter as I walked out. At the mosque, an elderly woman touched my arm and said softly, "Child, be strong. The sins of the past belong to the past." It wasn't cruel. It wasn't kind. It was public. My brother, who had always been better at blending into crowds, struggled worse. He told me people stopped him at work. Asked questions. Some of them harmless. Some sharp enough to cut. He didn't retaliate. He didn't snap. He just told them, "It's a family matter," and kept moving. For once, I saw the man he could have been, honest, vulnerable, humble. But consequences aren't always loud. Sometimes they come as distance. Lost trust. Shifting dynamics. People who once embraced you now offering only polite nods. The truth had set something free, but not without cost. And that cost was ours to carry. My brother and I walked home one evening after a long day of whispered conversations and too many stares. He finally said, quietly, "I didn't know it would be like this." I looked at him. At the man beside me. At the boy we used to be. "Truth has a way of touching everyone," I said. "Not just the ones who speak it." He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know," I replied. And for the first time, I believed him. The weeks after the public revelation felt like stepping onto unfamiliar ground. Each day carried its own weight, the quiet judgment of neighbors, the lingering questions from family members, the whispers in our own home. But gradually, as time passed, something else began to grow, understanding. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. But slowly, the sharp edges of betrayal softened, replaced by cautious conversations and tentative gestures. I started with small steps. One morning, I found myself in the kitchen while Mama brewed her chai. Steam curled around her hands, the warm aroma of cardamom filling the room. I poured myself a cup and watched her hands tremble just slightly, a little less than before. "Would you like me to help you organize the letters today?" I asked quietly. She looked up, her eyes shining with both pride and sorrow. "I'd like that, Beta. I'd like that very much." It was a simple moment. But it felt like a bridge being built. Rebuilding with my brother. My brother and I spent long afternoons in that same living room, going through documents, photographs, and letters. At first, the silence between us was heavy. We didn't speak much, just worked together, moving pieces of the past from one box to another. Gradually, we began talking again. Not about what had happened, but about memories, about our childhood, about our parents. "I never realized how scared you must have been," I said one day, sitting across from him. He rubbed his face, the lines of guilt still etched there. "I was scared every day," he admitted. "Scared of losing you. Scared of letting Mama down. Scared of facing a family that never accepted me." I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. "We're still here. We survived it. And now, we can move forward." He nodded slowly. And for the first time, I felt like the brother I had known, and loved, was returning. Healing Mama. Mama, too, began to find her peace. She told me, quietly, that she had been carrying a burden too long, hiding truths that were never meant to harm anyone but protect me. I was afraid, Beta, she said one evening as we folded old letters together. Afraid you would have to bear a life you didn't choose. I held her hands in mine. Mama, you gave me something no one else could, love, courage, and the knowledge that I belong. That's more than any inheritance. Her eyes softened, and she smiled for the first time in months, the kind of smile that carries both relief and pride. Rediscovering myself. With the secrets revealed and the family slowly healing, I found myself thinking differently about my own identity. For years, I had defined myself by the life I thought I knew. By the trust one placed in my brother. By the simplicity of our home. Now, I understood that my history was more complicated, more layered, and more resilient than I had ever imagined. I had a legacy, not just in wealth or inheritance, but in strength, courage, and the ability to forgive and move forward. I spent mornings in the garden, tending to the small jasmine plants Mama had planted when I was a child. I watched the flowers bloom slowly, their delicate white petals opening to the sun. And I realized, that was me now. Blooming slowly, with everything I had endured, with roots that had weathered storms, and the strength to grow despite them. Mending relationships. The hardest part of healing wasn't the documents or the inheritance. It was trust. But trust, like healing, grows in quiet increments. My brother and I laughed together again, softly at first, sometimes over trivial things. He learned to share decisions with me, rather than acting alone. We celebrated Mama's birthday quietly, the three of us together, without secrets or hidden letters. Even the rest of the family began to accept the truth, not perfectly, not without whispers, but enough to let us live our lives without constant judgment. A moral learned. I often reflect now on those months of heartbreak and revelation. On betrayal, and on love. On the things people hide to protect the ones they love, even when those secrets hurt more than they heal. I've realized that family isn't just about what you inherit. It isn't even about shared blood. It's about honesty, courage, and forgiveness. It's about showing up for each other, even when the truth is hard. And most of all, I've learned that betrayal can break you, but it can also teach you who you truly are, resilient, capable, and able to rebuild what once seemed irreparably broken. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything that happened, I realize how fragile yet resilient life can be. One act of betrayal can shake the foundation of your world. One hidden truth can change everything you thought you knew about yourself and the people you love. But in that fracture, there is also clarity. There is growth. There is the chance to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and more aware of what truly matters. I learned that family is not perfect. Sometimes, the ones you trust the most may falter. Sometimes, their choices will hurt you deeply. But love, honesty, and forgiveness have a power all their own. They can mend what seems irreparably broken and teach us to see each other with both compassion and understanding. My brother and I are not the same siblings we were before. We are different, scarred, yes, but also more connected in truth than ever before. Mama's courage and sacrifices remind me that the bonds of family are about more than shared blood. They are about care, protection, and the courage to face even the hardest truths together. So I leave you with this: life will always carry secrets, challenges, and betrayals. But how we respond, with grace, patience, and honesty, defines not only the relationships we keep, but also the person we become. Would you have faced the truth, even if it meant confronting the person you loved most? Would you forgive, or let the betrayal define the rest of your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please subscribe and support, because stories like these remind us of the human heart's strength, and how love, even after betrayal, can endure.